Hello, welcome to IELTS with Will. In my last video I showed you 3 types of grammar with some vocabulary that could improve your sentences in Task 2, and as requested from your comments, I've made another little one just to accompany this video. So let's go. In this lesson we're going to look at moving from a band 5 to a band 7 by using 3 other pieces of grammar to improve our sentences when we write. Let's generally first look at vocabulary. Here's a band 5 sentence on education. Students can learn more things from the internet. When you see a sentence like this, are there any words that look vague or unclear or not specific or very basic? These are the words you don't want. The first word I see that I don't like is the word things, because it's vague, it's not very formal, and it could mean anything. So we want to remove that word. And also we look at words like learn, etc. So we'll try to improve these words for a band 7, just the vocabulary. Instead of saying students this time, we say the word learners. So learners can acquire a broader range of knowledge through online platforms. So instead of saying the internet, we are a little more specific and we talk about online platforms. And this is key in vocabulary. To raise your vocabulary, you need to be less vague and more specific. It's more precise. And online platforms actually is a little more precise compared to internet. So this is what we want. Let's upgrade some vocabulary in technology sentence. Band 5. Technology is changing our lives a lot. So changing seems a very basic word. Our lives perhaps, and a lot doesn't sound very formal. A lot. Can you be more specific and formal? So we change this to technological advancements are significantly transforming modern lifestyles. So instead of saying our lives, we say modern lifestyles. Now, what's important about that is we don't want to say pronouns like my or our. When you're being formal, you don't want to use words like I or our. So we take it away and we say transforming modern lifestyles. Technological advancements are doing it, and we're not just changing. What are we doing? We're transforming. That does mean big. So it's a lot more formal and specific. Let's look at upgrading some vocabulary in health. So band 5 says eating junk food is bad for your health. So immediately you should see the word bad, B-A-D, is not a word you would need to use in Task 2. It's incredibly basic. Possibly a 3 in IELTS would know this word. So why are you using it? So you don't want to use this. We see the pronoun your. We see eating. There's lots of words that are very basic in general also and not very formal. So we want to change it. So the better word, more formal word for eating is, of course, consuming. So there we go. We've got that. Instead of saying junk food, that's a kind of informal term. We are saying processed foods, and they can be not bad for our health, but what's a good formal word for bad or not good? And that's detrimental, very good word, to one's physical well-being. So we don't say health, we say physical well-being. And think of all the essays on health that you may have practiced writing. How often do you say the word health? So physical well-being. And this time, instead of saying your, we've said one's instead of the very basic pronoun your, which we didn't really want to use anyway. Let's look at the topic of crime. Band 5, we've got this horrible word that we don't like to use very often in Task 2, and that's people. So some people do crimes because they don't have money. So people do crimes because they don't like this because it's a contraction. It should be do not have money. Lots of these words could be changed for a band 7. Certain individuals engage in criminal activities due to financial hardship. So due to is a better word than because, and you use because all the time, as we've seen in earlier videos of mine on here. So much better. All the words are formal, much more specific. That's what we want. Now let's move on to grammar. So today, like in my previous video, I'll choose 3 types of grammar to use to make these sentences more complex and better for your IELTS Task 2. And I'll choose 3 types of grammar that you probably know already. And this is key. Using the things you know first. And then we'll move on to the more difficult things. So 3 types of grammar today are present perfect tense, conditionals. There are many conditionals. I'll just use first and second conditional today. I'll remind you what they mean. And passive voice, which we used the last time, but I think is essential whenever you're writing formal sentences. Let's remind ourselves what present perfect is. You probably know it, but just to remind you. So what do you use present perfect for? So you use it to talk about past actions, things that happened in the past, but they have some effect or relevance in the present now. So events that happened perhaps over a period of time or even recently. These are the meanings of present perfect. I'm sure you've read it and practiced it in your grammar books many times before. How do you make it? Here's the structure. So you use have or has plus a past participle. Have done something, for example. Let's see present perfect in action in a sentence. So you have a band 5 sentence. Schools changed a lot in the last 10 years. So we don't like the word, if we're thinking about vocabulary, we don't like this word changed or a lot. But let's think about the grammar this time. Schools have undergone significant changes over the past decade. So what about the grammar this time? The grammar says have undergone. That's present perfect. Let's look at the topic of health. Band 5, the number of smokers went down. So went down, of course, the vocabulary doesn't sound very formal, but let's look at the grammar. Can we use present perfect in a band 7 sentence for this? Let's see. Band 7, the number of smokers has declined steadily over the past few years. Okay, so if you're a strong candidate, you should be able to use present perfect correctly. Often students who are a 6 are about 50-50 with present perfect. They attempt it, sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. For a 7, present perfect should not be a problem, so you need to use it. Let's look at travel, band 5. Many people, there's that word again, moved abroad recently. So recently suggests present perfect. So band 7, a growing number of individuals relocated overseas in recent years. That's the present perfect, have relocated. Better than saying they moved abroad in the past simple. So again, band 7 can use present perfect without much problem. If you use present perfect alone, it doesn't mean you get a band 7, but you will be able to use it. Let's look at conditionals. First of all, the definitions of the first and second conditional. These sentences are actually complex. They have 2 clauses, and you do learn them quite early in general English as well as IELTS. So the first conditional, just to remind you, real future situations. So if plus present simple, will, and a base form of a verb. So that's for when you think something really could happen, it's possible. Second conditional is highly unlikely. It's like a dream sometimes. But second conditional is about hypothetical or unlikely situations. If plus past simple, and then would, and the base form of the verb. So most of you will have studied this grammar already at school, perhaps. But are you using it and how to use it in the IELTS Task 2? Let's go. Let's look at a first conditional sentence with the topic of the environment, one that IELTS loves. Band 5. If people drive less, there will be less pollution. In actual fact, if you get a number of these conditionals correct, it could be better than a band 5, because usually a band 5 gets some of these wrong. But we'll go with this. So if people drive less, there will be less pollution. Band 7, we changed the vocabulary also. If individuals reduce their reliance on private vehicles, air pollution is likely to decrease. Is likely to. Second conditional, let's have a look at the topic of technology. A band 5, if they got it correct, would say, if I had a robot, I wouldn't do housework. So we see vocabulary we don't like, and it's a very basic band 5.5 type sentence, but it is an attempt at a complex sentence. Band 7 would make it much better. If I possessed a household robot, I would no longer be responsible for domestic chores. So you're combining conditional sentences with the vocabulary we looked at earlier, and immediately it looks much stronger. And what's good about conditional sentences is that they're possibly the easiest kind of complex sentence to use because they're already two clauses together. So you just need to tune them, good vocabulary, better words, and make them more formal, and they look better. All right, conditional sentence again. First conditional this time, health. Band 5, if you eat healthier, you will feel better. So this is a very common topic, both in the speaking and writing. And often you say the word healthy about 50 times when you're writing and speaking. And feeling good, feeling better or worse is very common as well. So the vocabulary really reduces this sentence's mark. But we combine the first conditional, a complex sentence with good, more precise vocabulary. And what does it look like? If individuals adopt a nutritious diet, they are likely to experience improved physical well-being. So we've taken the basics of a first conditional sentence, improved the vocabulary and the verb, actually. You have a much better formal sentence. Here's everybody's favorite, passive voice. Let's just remind ourselves about the definition of passive voice. So, one, you use it to emphasize the action, what was done, more than the person who did it. You don't want to talk about the person, you want to talk about the action. And also, it's used to be much more formal because, again, most of the time, you don't want to talk about some person who did something. You want to talk about the information, the details. How do you make it? This time it's the verb to be, and you include the past participle. Okay, we know how to make the passive voice. Let's look at some examples. Okay, that's a topic for the passive voice. So I'll give you just the very minimum examples this time because we've seen it in many of the videos, including the last one. But passive voice on crime, band 5. The police catch criminals quickly. Band 7. Criminals are apprehended swiftly by law enforcement authorities. So again, it changes the object and the subject order. Passive voice again on education. Band 5, teachers give homework every day. A very simple sentence. Band 7, an improvement anyway. Homework is assigned to students on a daily basis. So you've changed not just to passive, but you've changed to more accurate vocabulary. And this is what we want. What we want is to take that vocabulary and that grammar and combine to make the better sentence. Okay, so to recap, just to remind you if you drifted off, here are the 3 pieces of grammar that we've used, the 3 types of grammar we've used in this little video. So present perfect, conditionals, just the first and the second conditional today, and the passive voice, of course, can't be avoided. Okay, one last thing. So as we've seen throughout this little video, we started with vocabulary and we want to make it more precise and less vague, and we want to make it formal. And then we looked at 3 pieces of grammar, which are better, more complex, and more formal sentences. And also, for example, the present perfect, it's quite difficult for a 5, even a 6, to get this correct all the time. So we include present perfect for this because if an examiner sees present perfect used correctly and more than once, then this is impressive. It kind of solidifies your mark. So we've looked at these vocabulary and 3 separate pieces of grammar. So one last thing to do is to look at combinations, to look at getting the vocabulary and getting these different pieces of grammar and sticking them together. Then you've got really good complex sentences. So let's combine the good vocabulary, the more specific and formal, with one or two of these pieces of grammar we've just looked at today. Let's stick them together. All right, how the sentences look this time. So here, I would say, is a good Band 7 sentence on technology. Let's have a look. We've combined certain things. Technology has transformed the way information is shared. And if this trend continues, traditional forms of communication may eventually become obsolete. Isn't that a good sentence? So you've got, look at the vocabulary first, if you wish. It has transformed. You've also got traditional forms of communication, obsolete, nice words. A 5 could not do this. Now look at the grammar. What different kinds of grammar have you got in this one sentence? So technology has transformed. What's that? It's present perfect. The way information is shared. What's that? Passive voice. And then all we've done is use a joining word, in this case the simplest joining word, and. What comes after and? If this trend continues, traditional forms of communication may eventually become obsolete. What grammar is that? That's conditional. You've got conditional, you've got present perfect, and you've got passive, plus you've got improved vocabulary, and it's all in one sentence. It's helped by using a very simple joining word, and. Let's try again with another combination. This time we're talking about health. Okay, a number of health campaigns have been launched recently, and if individuals follow the guidelines provided, public health outcomes are likely to improve. Let's look at it first for vocabulary. So you didn't say a lot of, you said a number of. Health campaigns, good words, have been launched recently, and if individuals follow the guidelines provided, public health outcomes are likely to not get better, but improve. Good, strong vocabulary. It's not just one good word in there, it's consistently good words. Grammar, what about that? So a number of health campaigns have been launched recently. So what is that? That's present perfect, have been launched. Okay, passive. So that's present perfect passive. Then we use simple joining word, and everybody knows and. If individuals follow the guidelines provided, public health outcomes are likely to improve. What's that? It's a conditional. Okay. What have you got? You've got improved vocabulary throughout the sentence. And what have you got? You've got 3 good pieces of grammar, and it's all stuck together. This is also important, by a linking word. And this linking word is a simple one. It's and. Everybody knows that. A very good sentence. A 5 could not do this. One last combination sentence on crime, Band 7, hopefully. But if more investment is made in youth outreach programs, it is likely that crime rates will decrease, as several successful initiatives have already demonstrated. Okay, have a look at vocabulary, very strong in vocabulary. So if more investment is made, so if more investment, that means if they spend more money, but this is much more inaccurate. In youth outreach programs, good words, it is likely that crime rates will decrease. Successful initiatives have been demonstrated. So successful initiatives demonstrated. Okay, good words throughout, nice and precise. This vocabulary is good, strong, formal stuff. What about the grammar? Let's just have a look again. If more investment is made, it is likely that crime rates will decrease. What's that? That's a conditional. This time we do not use the joining word and, we use as. Okay, so we put as there. And what do we have after that? We have several successful initiatives have already demonstrated. Okay, that is a present perfect. So that's good. So we get conditional, we get present perfect. If we look at the conditional sentence, the first line, it says if more investment is made. So is made is actually passive. So you've got passive, you've got conditional, And you've got present perfect, and it's joined together with a very simple joining word, and that's as. Look at the vocabulary, and you've got pretty accurate and formal sounding words. For example, demonstrated instead of the word to show. This is how to use grammar that you already know. You can make it formal, you can combine it and use that together and then include good vocabulary. Okay, from this video, what are the tips to think about, take away, and maybe practice? First of all, of course, you need to be more formal. So basic words do not look formal. So you've got to improve the vocabulary for that. You've got to avoid the likes of vague vocabulary. For example, things. It's not certainly not in a task 2 because it's extremely general and vague. Be precise, please. Tell me exactly what you mean. To begin with, all you really need to do is practice and use the kind of grammar that you may have studied already. This time we've looked at 3 types of grammar again, but all of this grammar that you could possibly already know. It's not difficult, unheard of grammar. It's stuff you know already. So what you want to do is use that grammar that you know the best of your ability first. And if you do that, you can still get a high mark. Okay, so that's what we looked at today. We looked at present perfect, conditionals, and passive voice, which is necessary throughout all of formal English. That's what we've looked at today. I hope you found it interesting. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe below, and leave me comments if you wish. So until then, I'll see you next time.